Cool.
I'm going to start with the state of social media, like where we're at, and then basically what I think the effect on society is, and who's going to ultimately emerge in the future. So I think short form video content is clearly the most valuable content to social media companies right now because it's the most addictive, keeps people on the longest, keeps people engaged. But it is, on the flip side, probably the most damaging to individuals and society. Like, I like to consider it almost as a drug. Like, because it's just dopamine pumping.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm going on, I remove myself from Instagram off my phone, and I use the desktop version only now.
Yeah.
A little bit on my phone.
Solid move. I do the same. Yeah.
And it's such a better UI or UX, I guess, if you don't want to just be sucked in and like used like a drug addict. They're basically selling you like drugs, dopamine pumping you, but you still get all the valuable parts of it. So I don't know. What is your social media use right now? Are you using Instagram? Like, how are you as a consumer?
So, I mean, basically, I spend a lot of time on Twitter every day. Like, I kind of wake up, I check like Slack, my email, I check like Tech Meme, Financial Times or Wall Street Journal, maybe to just get like some mainstream big finance update. And then I'm, scrolling through Twitter. I don't mind like the algorithm. It recommends me some pretty good stuff on the For You, but so I'll check that out as well as what I follow. But I just get so much value on Twitter. I always get good stuff, good articles, good like real insights, not just trash. I mean, there are some marketing threads, but it's text form. You can't like brand your way to make your sentence better than it is. You can't make this like super insightful. It's a sentence, so it either is insightful or it's not. And it's also less addicting because it's not so visual. I don't have Instagram on my phone. I don't even keep YouTube on my phone. I only have Twitter in terms of social media on my phone. Instagram, I still have it. It's private. I have like a business Instagram that, we focus on to communicate with part of our audience. And the only thing I'm really thinking about doing with my personal is like stripping out the personal side and turning it into just like a business account that we run with like business content. But I get on there and I actually barely even log into my personal, but I'm mostly checking to see if any of my friends have messaged me, like so that I can make sure I stay in touch. That's the only thing I do with Facebook too. I do log into Facebook more. Being in Sweden, I keep a lot of conversations on Messenger, so I'll pop over there. But yeah, and then YouTube on my computer during the days. Like I do get value out of some different YouTube channels as well. That's basically what I use.
Yeah, I've removed Instagram because it's just absolute trash for the mind. As a consumer, I think it's extremely valuable as a producer. YouTube, I use quite a bit. I try to not look at YouTube Shorts ever, but sometimes I'll go down the rabbit hole. But there's so many just valuable videos I can watch, whether it be with business content or I keep up with a lot of political content via YouTube as well. Congressional hearings that are going on, etc. I never go on Facebook. And then Twitter, I really only use as a consumer. I haven't relaunched as a producer on Twitter, but I think moving forward down the line over the next couple of years, that'll probably end up being one of my number one main social platform as a producer. Instagram, I'm considering. I don't have it on my phone. I use it on the computer because it's way better UX. But I'm thinking about scheduling my personal content on my personal page through productivity app. Like ClickUp is what we use for clients for organizing content. I'm thinking about treating my personal the same exact way, so I can be a producer. I can keep posting, and I just have my team post everything, can respond to comments, I still am connected with everybody. I still get engagement, but I don't actually have to even touch it. I can just send it off to someone else.
Yeah.
Manage it. So with that being said, obviously taking someone's attention is valuable. And up until now, the industry has basically been get as much attention as possible, keep it as long as possible, make sure that attention doesn't go to your competitors or anywhere else in the world, and just suck it in. But it seems like there's a shift where people are consciously understanding their attention is valuable and that their life is being negatively affected. So now they're choosing to actively use softwares, use these platforms that are looking out for their best interests. At least I, as a consumer, okay, Twitter isn't going to just suck me in and use my neurochemistry against me to get me addicted. Therefore, I'm going to open Twitter.
Man. That's what they're doing, man. That's what they're doing. Until you have more control over your own feed, like the algorithm will always recommend like the junk food, like because you will have a weak point, like where you're not paying attention and you just click on entertainment. And then it starts training on entertainment rather than on like, what is your intention with this? Like most of the time, 90% of the time during the day, I'm looking for value. I am sometimes looking for like entertainment, but I'm looking for like different shades of entertainment and value. Sometimes I'm looking for a podcast in the background where I can get like some interaction. I can get some stuff done while I'm listening to the podcast, but I can also get some good bits of wisdom. Sometimes I am looking for pure entertainment, but I think the problem is they get so overloaded. Instagram in particular, for me, was impossible to not have it be pure trash. Like, even though I followed a bunch of interesting people, you know, you get some awesome stuff from Goggins or, you know, whatever it might be. But you're also, no matter what, you're going to get these booty shots and these like luxury lifestyle things and everything. And it's like, that's not what I want to train my mind on. Like, I don't want to get that in my day-to-day life. Like, I want to make sure I'm getting value. And Instagram is just so full of that. I mean, it's so full of the junk food. The same with shorts. I agree. And I think it's more about, you know, for me, it's about Twitter. It's about, you know, YouTube and then it's about just not spending all day consuming content and spending time like actually doing stuff, like building your own business is much more important too.
Yeah. I definitely think Instagram is clearly a net negative for society. And Zuck is so good at always saying, anytime whether it be in Congress, on a podcast, anything, he's always like, oh, well, our goal is to connect everyone around the world. And I think we're doing a good job of that. We have X amount of users. And then he will never recognize any negative with Meta products, which I think there are incredibly significant. And I would say probably as a whole, Meta is net negative as of today. Probably for overall society, net positive still, for sure. But day to day, at least for the United States, I would say it's net negative. And it's incentivizing over-sexualization of women in particular.
Exactly, yeah.
Like consumerist lifestyle, all the things that are just quick dopamine hits, instant gratification, but aren't beneficial for individuals' lives or society. And I like how we just did TikTok.
I mean, honestly, no. I mean, we do short form video. There is some short form video. It's fun. It gets exposure. So from a business sense, it makes sense. But yeah, I don't get on there at all. That reminds me actually of this chart that I saw. I think I dug it up. It was kind of cool actually, because basically teen loneliness. Let me share my screen here real quick. But basically teen loneliness dropped. Let's see, this should be it.
Dropped.
It was like at its lowest levels. So yeah, school loneliness. basically when we were kids, it was pretty peak because I don't know all the reasons driving it, but we started to get cell phones, but these were like flip phones. These weren't like these super addictive smartphones. And
So
I
it's
mean, when you and I were
in the
younger,
y-axis.
we were hanging out with our friends all the time. This
So-
is school loneliness.
So we were
This is different areas. So this is the world average.
least lonely when we were in school, is what you're saying.
Yes. So depending on the graph, it kind of was a little bit lonelier before us. I'm not sure if that's just because the world was a little bit more hardcore or what it was, but somewhere around the 90s was the other graph I was
Probably
seeing
was like a
where,
little more separated. Society was still coming together more in terms of cities, towns, etc.
and obviously this is super, it depends on the place, but you do see kind of an overall spike in loneliness. And this kind of goes along with what many people have noticed is that like the younger generation spends so much time on their phones. They have a harder time making genuine connections. I mean, we could text our friends, we could listen to like the first iPods and stuff and listen to music, but we were also like, getting together and playing Halo. And like, we weren't like, we had the advantages of tech, but it wasn't so like, social media wasn't what socializing was. You know what I mean? I mean, MySpace. Do you remember MySpace?
No.
When we had the profile music, that was awesome.
We all had to
But that was
code our own profiles by like
custom Monster Energy, like
yeah,
glowing. Yeah,
fantastic.
exactly. Yeah.
Those are good old days. Yeah, so it's insane to see that these companies, specifically if you listen to Zuck, that are made for connecting the world and improving relationships, are doing literally the exact opposite, to the point where it's the most lonely people in the world as of right
so
now.
China is programming TikTok to show young people science, engineering, math, educational short form content. Like there's huge disadvantages to having like these governments like this, but
is TikTok choosing to do that by their own free will, or is the government forcing TikTok, or at least heavily recommending in CCP fashion, that those restrictions be put in place? It seems like that's probably,
I'm not certain, but I would say 90% chance that it's a directive. I don't think the company would choose that, but it's something that is being done where they have this child-friendly version with educational videos and a time limit as well to how long the kid can spend. So I think that's the direction we have to go. Like we can't move towards idiocracy. We have to move towards education and a meritocracy.
They also have really open and closed times, correct? You know about that?
They have a time limit. I don't know about open and closed times, but I would imagine they've got it tuned in.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat so like you can on the weekends the whole time, but on the weekdays it's only open for certain hours. I think something along those lines, and I'm sure it's changing semi-consistently. But
yes,
obviously those seem like positives, especially when you see the negatives happening with our society and social media. But at what point do we not want the government telling us what we can and can't do? So it's
I think all they need to do is just give you these controls. They don't need to impose, because you don't want censorship. You don't want them controlling what is being said or not said. But if you allow the controls for the user, or for the parent in this case, to be able to tune their kids' TikTok or
the government requiring social media companies to allow for a following feed, like on Twitter and TikTok, you can look at only people you're following. Instagram, you don't have that ability. So that could be something where the government forces these companies to allow it to not be pushing you an algorithm, but let's say a chronological following feed.
Yeah, the problem is the government is so slow to regulate. So it's always behind on issues, and it doesn't seem to be able to think about these things and make the right decisions. But to me, it would be like what Elon's done is he's basically, in my view, done a public good by trying to make Twitter more transparent and open for everyone, whether you're on the left or the right. Now, some people think it's the end of the world what he's doing, but in my opinion, you should see people that you don't agree with making their points and telling you their view. You should see people that you agree with. You should, in my world, I think freedom of speech is very important. And you should be able to say some pretty wild stuff before you get a timeout. Obviously, you shouldn't be able to incite violence. You shouldn't be able to put people in danger. There needs to be some rules and regulations. And this is a thing that the government should be thinking about, because these are, like, as it's been said, these are our town squares. And so, as we saw in the Twitter files, basically these organizations like the FBI actually have agendas that they're pushing in these social media companies. And they're able to label things, like the laptop story as Russian disinformation and stop that story from getting out. Or as we're seeing with the Capitol riots, different narratives are being pushed. And for me, it's just like, I think both sides should want open and honest conversations. So that's really where I stand. I think the government needs to make sure that these places are good for the world. I'm also not for a super big government, and unfortunately, any government program never ends and never gets cut. So that's a different issue. But yeah, I think making sure the U.S. needs to win on education. I've always thought that it's going to be impossible for the U.S. to get a social system like Sweden has, where I am now. It's just too hard. If one state did it successfully, then all the homeless people go there, and then that state gets brought down. So it's not really possible to have the same welfare system in the U.S. We have to find a different way to compete. And also politically, I don't think that's a viable path forward either for the U.S. The U.S. is a huge country. It's a different animal. So I would say you have to just try to win on education, and it doesn't feel like the U.S. is doing a great job at educating. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents on that.
Definitely not. Definitely not. To go on a different tune, because I think we could talk about social media all day. Yes, I agree the government is very slow to adjust to certain things, specifically technology, but they're very quick to print a ton of money and give it to banks. About as quick as anything else that they ever do, which is now what we're seeing again. And I've been trying to understand the situation currently, looking at 2008 a little bit and trying to see the similarities, because obviously it's very different, but seeing banks fail is pretty rare. So obviously anytime banks fail, it's going to be similar. And in terms of how the government's reacting to it, and I'm trying to figure out moving forward what makes sense for investments, store of value, where just economic trends are going to go. So if you're looking at cash now, if you're holding your cash in a bank, and that bank is basically taking your cash, making terrible investments, losing all of your money, and then that bank is collapsing, and then you're left out. Like the FDIC might give you your money if you're loaded. If you have 5 million, you're not going to get that money back. So, all right, holding your money in a regional bank is now no longer safe. You could just lose your money. Banks were safe. Okay, burying your cash in the backyard, not looking that bad anymore. You have precious metals, and then I hate to try to bring it back to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, although over the last 6 months people think it's so sketchy, holding Bitcoin in the last 6 months would be better than holding your money at Silicon Valley Bank. So in terms of store value, just not losing all of your money, obviously real estate is in there, and I think very valuable. But for the average person, is it just hold your money at JP Morgan Chase and have some Bitcoin, have some gold, diversify. Most people buy real estate. Like, what are you going to do as an individual, like the average person that wants to just not have the bank lose their money and run away?
I mean, the challenge is the true average person is looking for like lower volatility. So they just want their money to be there. They want it to be sound. The average person should be thinking about cutting their costs and actually starting to invest and save. And so that's probably the downside to Bitcoin for the average person is the volatility is not going to be good enough for them to be able to handle. They need some more stability. But for people who are financially literate and who know what they're doing, they can kind of do their due diligence and make the bet on where they want to put their exposure. And so definitely at our age, I think given what Bitcoin does, I think there was a lot of grift within the crypto space. It was a lot of scams. But if you just look at Bitcoin and what it does for emerging countries that don't have control over their financial system, who have runaway inflation in their currency, if you look at the Turkish lira and what has gone on there, if you look at unbanked countries where they can't count on their currency even being around in 5 years, you just don't know. Just based on that hypothesis alone, I think over a 10-year run, Bitcoin's going to be excellent. I'm personally betting on it. But yeah, I mean, the banking question is really interesting too. I think it was a good call to back up the depositors. I think it was very likely contagion was going to spread and we were going to have, further monetary downside in the financial markets and across the economy. So I think it was a good call. I just think all that you need to do is you need to basically make sure banks can't put deposit money into high risk assets. Silicon Valley Bank should not be doing venture debt with deposits. They should not be giving money to high risk startups with their deposits. Silicon Valley Bank also did a horrible job at assessing their duration risk. If you buy bonds that are just 10-year 1% bonds or whatever they might be, and then interest rates go up, those bonds drop in value because they're now only returning you 1% in 10 years, but that's not worth as much as the 4% you can get today or whatever it might be. So then the value, and banks, another huge problem is banks don't book their balance sheet to market value. So banks are allowed to put these as the value when they bought them, essentially. I could be wrong on this. I don't know the details of the rules, but they basically don't book them to market. Mm-hmm. So, if you buy a bond at $100 and it then is going to return, $101 in a year or whatever it might be, then let's say interest rates go up and that bond is only worth $90. They don't have to write that on their books. And so you don't see on their books that their assets are worth less than the deposits and liabilities that they own. Mm-hmm. So I think that could help solve it. Banks would have to be more transparent. They should have to, people don't care about the return on their checking account. People don't want, you can go invest in equities and other stuff. I can show you a chart in a second as well. But
so do you think this is only solved with government regulation? Because as of now, banks had to hold 10% of all the money that was deposited. Through COVID, they dropped that to 0%, and that's still been the same. So the government regulation has been going the opposite direction. I think if I give my money to a bank, I want them to at least keep 50%. They can still use half of that money. We have fractional reserve banking, so they're realistically sending out 5x that still if they're holding 50% on their balance sheet. So why do they have to hold 0? And then they go out and then they just lose all the money, and then it's a big fucking issue. For what reason is the
The
government?
good news is it was much worse. So there used to be bank collapses and bank runs all the time earlier in history. And so we've pretty much got rid of that to where we barely see it. So the good news is we've kind of figured it out. We do have a little bit further to go, I would say. Yeah.
I feel like if they were required to keep more money essentially on hand, then it would instill further confidence in the public that, oh, they have my money. I don't need to run down there and get the small fraction of money that they actually have. Because if I go tomorrow, or the next day, or the next day, I'll still be able to get my money. Just the banks would make a little bit less money, but the banks are going to lobby the government to say, no, we're greedy. We want to make as much money as possible. And then it leaves us with this every 15 years. Yeah,
Yeah, my bad. Let me share my screen here real quick. These are cool. First time I saw these charts was like a guy from like BlackRock back when I was studying finance at UW showed one of these. Basically, they break down asset returns each year and what was the best performing asset class. But you can see like cash is always near the bottom. I mean, like cash, if you want a return, like you're usually losing money on your cash if you account for inflation, because this is going to be lower than the rate of inflation. So the true return on this is always going to be negative. So depending on who you are, you need to spread your portfolio to other things like small cap stocks, large cap stocks, real estate. You know, just start getting in the game and you're going to do well. But holding cash, these numbers, even at 1.8% in 2018, guaranteed that's not beating inflation. And so you're still losing your purchasing power that year. What do we got? 79% this year in emerging markets? Great. I mean, 37%, you know, you just at a younger age, get in a diversified high risk portfolio. It doesn't have to be risk of going zero. It's just volatility. If you own a balanced portfolio or a Vanguard portfolio where they have very low fees, you're going to have a great return over a 15-year horizon. So,
yeah.
Well, what else should we talk about since we don't have a lot of time today?
To keep, you know, we can go into a new sector, but maybe it's a segue to that. An example that I'm dealing with right now of why I'm pissed off at the banking system and why I'm taking another look at crypto. I was really big on crypto. It's been down. I've kind of just not been paying that much attention because I don't think it's serving me to spend hours a day researching, but I'm still holding a relatively significant amount. I need to send a wire to a supplier. I got a wire in from a client. I need to send a decent sized wire to a supplier. The wire cutoff on Friday is 1 p.m. on the West Coast, roughly. So we get outdated. We get that sent out after 1. Supplier is saying, hey, where's the money? And I have to say, hey, it's coming through on Monday because why? Because the Fed is closed and we need to send the money to the Fed first and then they redirect it, I believe is the case. So like these people aren't even associated with the money. Why does the money need to go to them prior to going to the supplier? Why can't I just have a relationship with my supplier? And why do I even need the bank for that matter? Now, I'm getting, I like banks. I think they're valuable. But and then, so get this. It's for this business is I bank with First Republic. So not only do I have to wait, it might go under in the next 3 days and the money be gone. So it's like if I was holding Bitcoin, okay, it might go down 20%. It might go down 50%, but I could send it immediately and I know it's going to be there. It's like, there's value in knowing that your money's not going to spike down 20% in a day. but there's also value in being able to actually have access to it. To actually know that it's going to be there. As of now, I don't know if on Monday First Republic's going to be able to send my money, because I don't know if First Republic is going to have any money to send, because they took all of our money and they blew it on stupid investments, like absolute degenerates. They're acting like the meme traders on Reddit we look down on, or like society look down on. And now we look at these banks and they're not even checking themselves. They can even not go bankrupt. So it's like, so I'm looking at crypto again, specifically Bitcoin. Obviously there's these just terrible examples of coins. Luna being the one that looked most legitimate, that just tanked. We have FTX, which had an FTT coin, which, you know, they were the second biggest platform in the world that tanked. But
I can't wait for that Netflix series to come out on FTX. What a story. God.
Yeah. So what's different from what FTX, and I mean, obviously there's some obvious ones, but FTX and Silicon Valley Bank. Okay, they took a bunch of money. They blew a bunch of money.
FTX was clear fraud, and they were taking deposits that in their terms and conditions, they clearly said they would not touch, and they were putting into their trading hedge fund, Alameda Research. And so Silicon Valley Bank was just following the rules that weren't the best rules. And I mean, banks historically are not a great investment, because, I mean, companies fail. And when you have companies that are all built on financial engineering and leverage, like, people just aren't that smart. It always blows up in your face, because there's always a black swan event that causes high volatility, and you can't engineer your portfolio perfectly. What you can do is you can take, you know, smart people like, you know, Warren Buffett seems to be. There are companies that figure out conservative approaches that make money, but keep your assets safe through all conditions. And so it is possible. It's just those institutions should not be trying to get the highest return. You know, the bank that runs the whole world should not also be trying to use everyone's money to make the most money, because that means they're taking on more risk. The financial plumbing of the world should actually be low risk, so that everyone else can take risk without risk of a huge collapse.
So I heard Silicon Valley Bank executives took bonuses right before they filed Chapter 11, like a couple of days ago. They all paid themselves out big checks after they fucked everyone over.
You should not be able, you should have to return that stock if it's sold within a year of bankruptcy or something. Like, there should be some rule about that. That's just crazy. Like,
but as a consumer, like, obviously FTX did a bunch of illegal things, Silicon Valley Bank didn't. If I lost 100 grand on FTX and I lost 100 grand on Silicon Valley Bank, I don't care if they did something illegal or not. I would be just as pissed off that they basically it comes down to negligence and stupidity in both cases, realistically. Yeah, like FTX, they might have been bigger scumbags, but at the end of the day, if they were doing illegal things but they pulled it off, I'd rather them do that with my money than act legally and lose my money. So, like, as a consumer, like, I just want you to take care of my money and not absolutely blow it and lose it. So I agree. Obviously, don't do illegal things. Like, I definitely don't respect that. But as someone in the market, just a normal person, at the end of the day, I just want my money. So, like, if you're doing something illegal, like, just pull it off. You know, like all these companies like Theranos, if they pulled it off, then no one would have cared.
Yeah, I mean, when you get into the big company world, it's crazy, because then you get into the whole gangster world where you're dealing with oil deals and you're dealing with third world countries. I mean, I love my Apple products, but they were previously manufactured in buildings that had to have nets on them so that people didn't jump out of them. I know they've worked to fix that, but the world is crazy because it's a huge capitalist world at the end of the day, and that's the way it's always been to some extent. I think that's just the way it's going to be played for a while until we can get more automation and strive for better standards. But it's difficult, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then we have the issue of cobalt in the Congo, which I believe is what 70% of all the cobalt, all the lithium ion batteries in the world come from Congo. So that's a whole nother issue. We really couldn't live without some form of, I don't know if I call it slave labor or forced labor or really fucked up labor. But people don't realize at all. And it's completely true. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be something that's going to be a big shift moving forward.
It's good we have the transparency, though, because I think we'll continue to move in the right direction. I mean, basically, the whole world used to be that before. I mean, if you talk about being like a sharecropper and like basically, you know, you're basically in debt to whoever you work for forever, and you never make enough to stand up on your own 2 feet. So, yeah, that one's wild, definitely. But I mean, honestly, I think Bitcoin's going to have a good run. I think the market's going to have a good run. I'm hoping in you know a year we can start to get back into a better bull market or something. But there's definitely a lot of volatility ahead. The world is in a very volatile place. I mean, we've got the war going on in Ukraine, competing interests there. China is continuing to grow and become more powerful, and it's an incredible game of chess that's going on in the world. And all I really want is more independent people being able to vote on what they want, and I would like the US to try to stay out of things a bit but still position themselves to always be defended and in a good place. So I mean, I think investing in education is a clear win-win for the economy, for the future safety of the nation, everything.
Yeah, I think the US just needs to not fuck up, realistically. Clearly, position is the best. Best economy. The US dollar is incredibly strong relative to everyone else. Even
we should watch some Peter Zion on here sometime because he's definitely bullish. Yeah,
he is. I have some issues with him sometimes here and there.
One of his seem like he's kind of just saying stuff sometimes, but I mean, incredibly.
He says things so confidently that you can't tell when he's bullshitting. He'll say something incorrect, just mega confidently, and you'll just
like, is it just an opinion, or is it like something that he has like facts behind? Yeah, exactly.
When he starts saying things like electric cars and with Mexico, things that I have a decent understanding of, then I start realizing, okay, not everything he says is actually perfect. Like, that was stupid.
Yeah.
Then I think when he says, and I think he's fantastic, and he's absolutely probably the best in the world at what he does, just to be clear. But it's made me take a step back and be like, all right, I need to reanalyze. But yeah, he is fantastic. But realistically, we just need to not fuck up. And some of the ways that we could fuck up is, I mean, if inflation gets out of control, that would be absolutely huge issue. If a ton of banks collapse, another huge issue. Real estate looks like it's decent. I mean, if we have a lot of small business owners that get screwed over, they made it through COVID, so looking resilient. So that's probably not an issue, but I don't think sending a ton of money overseas all the time is going to help us. So we'll see. We just need to not make these big. And I agree with you. Education is one of those.
What we need to do is just keep building our skill set in our businesses. And, you know, you should never let the circumstances affect, you know, your outlook. You need to make it happen. It's like, I forget this guy's name, you know, some legendary historical figure basically said something about, like, you know, men with character don't care about their circumstances. They just make it happen. Like, yeah.
Great quote.
I mean, yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, the world has been much gnarlier, so I think we can make it happen. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, don't have much time today to talk more, but we should definitely talk more about, you know, what we're doing in our businesses in the next shows we get on. Super fun today though, chopping it up.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out at the end. Most important thing is increasing your active income. We can talk about investments all day. If you're worth less than 100 million, less than 10 million, like, don't worry about like all these investments, where to put your money. To an extent, yes, but at the end of the day, you know, if you're not worth tens of millions, focus on making more money, building a skill, building your own business, making your way up in your company. So at the end of the day, that's what we're ultimately focused on the most. So yeah, I'd love to jump into what we're doing specifically to improve those things, because I think we have both a lot of developments coming up in real time.
Exactly. Let's get into that one on the next one. Otherwise, signing off for today. Thanks, guys, for watching.